so we can quietly deal with the upstart and get the recognition of the leader, Wu Chong rejoiced. Having resolved this issue, the conspirators headed towards the elevator. Are we sending people to China? Yu Byung asked. It's all because of the Pedo Guild. They were created 2 years ago and have already squeezed half of China's dungeons. Their head left just 4 years ago, but the tower has turned her into a true monster, and her followers are incredibly strong. But the most surprising thing is that she is ranked 5th in the world rankings. No way the spirit of Qing Shi Huang has revived in her. No one knows anything. There was a girl with a skull tattoo standing in the incense smoke. The guild can't waste resources, so the nail that came out must be hammered down, while all the forces are directed to China, Wu Chong remarked. A special specialist is needed. What a disgusting face. Hyunwoo squinted into the selfies of the smartphone camera. What technology had come to? He marveled as he sat in Shinken's living room, happy as a child. A bird is about to fly out. He clicked his camera for the 100th time, filming everything. All the digital novelties were outlandish to a hermit with 12 years of experience. There was a kid and no kid. Hyunwoo learned about games, videos, music, and risked drowning forever in the world of digital networks. The Soul Guild owns the Forest Village dungeon, Shinken informed him, but his friend was no longer able to return. The magic of the internet was stronger. "Gay, I'll have the best farm," whispered the mad hermit Hyunwoo to himself. "But there won't be a boss there," informed Shinken to the teenager in front of him. The information came with a giraffe delay, about 7 seconds, until the meaning of what was said reached the gaming nerd. "What do you mean the boss is gone?" he shrieked. "What do you mean caught a few weeks ago?" The new information was changing the whole matter considerably. In the tower, monsters appear every day, regular and bosses, no matter how many you kill them, Shinken explained. But the dungeons of the world outside the tower, other normal monsters are also revived. To infinity, farm don't want to. But bosses, unlike mobs, have a full social package, paid vacation, pension, and days off on vacations. In short, they need time. How long would it take, Hyunwoo asked. When he was told that it would take a month, he barely got foam out of his mouth. But he was lucky, according to the schedule. The monster was coming out of vacation in a couple 3 days, so it would be possible for him to pay a visit, Shinken informed. But what about the visible swamp? Hyunwoo asked. But there was no information on that object. The swamps belonged to the Ares Guild. Shinken offered to look for better information, but Hyunwoo had already gone into his own mind to have His Majesty get so worked up over a monster, no way in hell. He plopped down to hold the couch with his back again when Shinken suggested he register with the association. The equipment was of little interest to the mad hermit, who won even naked, but at the word money he triggered Pavlov's conditioned reflex. Turns out you can get money if you get tested every 2 to 3 months and prove your rank. Hearing such wonderful news, the broke bum, the hermit leader got very excited and was ready to go in the middle of the night for a performance review. In the morning, they went to the place where hunters' abilities were measured. A large building in the center of the city spoke of the high status of hunters in society. The floor of the building was slapped with the legendary slaps of fate by the great hermit who had finally decided to stop being a dependent. They walked into the association building like real tough guys. It was hard not to recognize them. But the dumbass in the reception area did it. But it's a credit to Hyunwoo's appearance, which hasn't changed since he left the tower and is still as wild as ever. "Come check in," he asked the duty question to the strange guy in the suit, and got the answer, Kim Hyunwoo. The name had traveled around the world and sounded very familiar, so the tester immediately asked if it was the one who had returned from the tower 12 years later. "That's right," confirmed the sucker, thinking about how to get the money for the registration as soon as possible. The association official frowned. This was definitely the man, and they had already asked about him today. That weird blonde guy, who looks a little off, was asking about Kim Hyunwoo. A yokel with nothing special about him, but with so many rumors and noise about him, thought the tester as he looked at the hunter. After confirming the formalities, he handed the shaggy-haired hermit a strange object and pointed to a projector in the middle of the room. The object looked as if the demon had been shoved under a press and turned into a compact cube with an eye sticking out of it. The principle is simple. Once it was touched, it showed a status window and all the characteristics of the hunter who held it. Hyunwoo took hold of the demonic cube and the projector opposite lit up, making a measurement. At rank maximum, pondered the tester as they waited for the counts. Maybe B+, since he is so famous after all, there is no smoke without fire. But what was his surprise when he saw the result? "That's it," asked the bored hermit. "Give me my money already," thought he. But suddenly he heard a suspicious noise, so lighted was the fuse of the satyr. The tester screamed like a berserker on his way to Valhalla, Hyunwoo barely dodging the slobbering spray. "How is that possible?" yelled the entire association building. News spread like hotcakes with potatoes. The world-wide web of rumors was already in full swing discussing the experienced player. The news stunned and overturned all notions of normalcy. All of Hyunwoo's rank A skills, except for magic, are something to envy. Hyunwoo was riding in the car and listened to the video of the reactions to his testing. But what was even more surprising was that they had barely left the building and the rumors had already spread everywhere. "It's no big deal," Shin Ken remarked, clutching the polygonal steering wheel. "Because his friend is a celebrity, people are sleeping and seeing to find out a little more about him." Especially since Hyunwoo had recently made a mess of the Ares dungeons, turning the place upside down. "You don't care about that, but..." Shinken hesitated as he turned to his friend, clearly worried about him. The Ares Guild had definitely made inquiries and got wind of everything, including today's inspection. They definitely wouldn't leave Hyunwoo alone. "Be careful," he said, and wanted to add dopehead but was too well-mannered. "Ares really are dangerous people," Shinken continued, but not getting an answer, he became indignant. Instead, the reclusive Hyunwoo chuckled nastily, as befits a madman, distracting the driver from driving. "He's definitely got 8th grade syndrome." Hyunwoo disregarded the rules of the road and shoved the screen in Shinken's face. In the video, there was a loading in-game that appeared when going through the dungeons. Hyunwoo played the dungeons because he couldn't live without them anymore. Look at what a retarded pose and a strange aura chortled Shinken's unserious friend. In the video, there was Shinken, but crazy hermit Hyunwoo didn't realize it right away. He continued to bitch at his friend without realizing it, making fun of the fighting techniques. Shinken, who had long since become an adult, could not get used to his friend being a bit detached. He said again that it was him in the video. Ah, the gears in the shaggy-haired hermit's head rattled uncomfortably. There was an awkward silence. Me and my friend are retarded, Shinken thought. But what can I take from the wretched? Hyunwoo still didn't know what to say, so he decided to pretend to be a mannequin. And it was a miracle that he didn't forget his speech while playing the role of Rapunzel. The silence lengthened. Hyunwoo strained to remember what normal people do in such situations, maybe dancing naked and diffusing the situation. Then it hit him. He should just change the subject and decided to ask his friend a question. "Rubric ask a useless question on the screen and you don't do anything at all," Hyunwoo asked. He asked why Shiken wasn't doing anything even though he was also the head of the guild. Teaching a fool only spoils a fool, Shinken thought, and asked a counter-question. What made him think that the guild leader might not be busy? Even now he was wasting precious free time on a homeless hermit without a residence permit, but he didn't seem to appreciate it. The empty corridors of the Ares Guild office gave off a chill as if it were a king's palace. Yuben was in a gloomy confusion. News came from the Hunter Testing Center. A real monster. Now it's clear why the head wants to deal with him, confirmed Wu Jung. Yubing felt the tension. It was constricting in a way that could bite off a crowbar. Wu Jung thought the same thing, but wondered aloud about his colleagues' thoughts on the dangerous business. "Don't worry," Wu Chong said. "I'm worried myself, but we will definitely deal with this threat." He grinned gloatingly. He called out a name and did so with significance, Shin Zhonggang. Yubing was distracted from his heavy thoughts and interrogated excitedly. "An S-ranked hunter from China, just as high-ranked as Hyunwoo, but much more dangerous. Now that cursed Hyunwoo will chew the ground and beg for mercy." The bandit smirked evilly. It was a moonlit night in the dungeon of the forest village. The friends had descended here without any problems, for it was run by Shin Ken's guild. They timed it perfectly to get here a minute before the boss showed up. There's enough for one hit anyway. They took an assistant with them to carry everything they needed. How useful to have a servant, Hyunwoo thought, who lived like a hermit. They had drilled deep into the forest. Without the low-ranked guide kid, Hyunwoo would have to tear down the entire forest to get out of it. However, they were not alone here, though they did not know it and walked on without lurking. The man with good teeth so far smiled while he could. Hyunwoo once again showed his attention to people. After half an hour of walking together, he asked who it was with them. The kid introduced himself as Park Ga-moon, but he's just a simpleton. What can I take from him? He's Frodo Baggins' faithful comrade, Shin Ken explained. We'll collect the loot from the monster and do all the dirty work. If you catch a boss, you can get items from it and get money for them. Money? It clicked in the penniless hermit's mind. A fortune for the boss. That's a lot of money to spend. Shin Ken stopped thinking about how to tell his friend gently that he was a bum and looked accordingly. Normal people don't walk around in gym shoes and barefoot flip-flops. Young Samyus Gamgee pulled out his phone and asked for a celebrity photo. It was as if Hyunwoo had once again discovered the presence of the person beside him. He basically didn't care when it was taken down, but he still asked what it was for. Park Ga-moon started telling the sitter about video hosting, advertising, views, and earnings. All right, gave the go-ahead to Hyunwoo, including the player's abilities in the Mac-level Monopoly. You to me 8, fair and square to everyone, I counted. The company headed onward, with Shin Ken and Hyunwoo walking in front and Park Ga-moon broadcasting. Shin Ken held out a folded piece of paper to the hermit. Woo Hyun laid it out, trying to figure out what he was looking at. How long ago he graduated, he thought. The forest village is labyrinthine, and it's hard to wander around. Hyunwoo scrutinized the map. He had skipped geography class for nothing. He looked more closely in the dim moonlight. What's north or south from above, he thought. The map looked like a satellite image, but where would the dungeons get satellites from? Hyunwoo wondered. He was twisting it this way and that, but he was too shy to ask, because they'd call him stupid. That's the problem, the hermit thought. Screw it. Woo Hyun just threw a useless piece of paper. I'll figure it out somehow, he thought. He just walked over to the tree and figured out the direction the boss should be. Hyunwoo smiled, anticipating easy money. He turned to their companion. Park Ga-moon wanted to say his name, but didn't dare. He was a shy guy after all. Get a good shot of everything, the greedy hermit of no fixed abode told him. Still, Park Ga didn't quite understand what this strange man would do. Hyunwoo stood up for the punch. You have to do everything spectacularly in one take. Hard work of professional YouTube stars. He focused and launched his trademark blast of searing plasma. The ionized gas around his fist flashed with a sheaf of blue sparks, his fist instantly heating the air to thousands of degrees. He took a wider swing to make it flare up bigger and brighter, which you can't do for show. With you program evening loggers, the tree in front of him all covered in fire, the shockwave went up, splitting it down the middle. Park Ga-moon saw this for the first time, the bright light of the flashes blinding his eyes. The tree in the clearing vaporized, along with the ground beneath it and everything else within striking range. Some ogre caught off guard. The guy wanted to say that it was unheard of to work so hard on the first day, back from vacation, but his toothy mouth was ill-suited for that. Even the experienced Shin Ken was impressed by such a demonstration. What to say about their porter? He almost flopped on his butt in surprise. But you gotta hand it to the kid. He held up well in the face of some real monsters. We continue with Hyunwoo's program. Please subscribe and like it. In one hit, Hyunwoo cleared the way to the boss. Screw the scary geography girl. He can handle it without the cards. The disgruntled dungeon employee waved his hands indignantly. The southern temperament was telling. These people didn't understand anything at all. Hyunwoo made a point of light, once again not sparing his flip-flops. In one motion, he soared toward the bifurcated head of the ogre. The latter waved back with a cry of ruffians depriving him of his sight, but no one understood him. Free kick delivery arrived. Hyunwoo was approaching the ogre. It landed deftly on his shoulder, much to the honest dungeon director's dismay, for the guest could have fallen and hurt himself. A powerful kick rejected his polite address. A supernova erupted from his blow. Ogre collapsed on his back. A sick day for sure. The master of writing people and not only sanitarium certificates landed on top. Newcomer Park Ga-moon barely had time to point and sharpen his camera. A true hero hermit, forester, hunter, and just a good man, Hyun-woo proudly flaunted the body of the unfortunate dungeon director. Park Ga-moon was crying with happiness. He seemed to be feeling sympathy for the homeless hermits with insane strength. In the shade of the trees, sitting on a branch like a hen on a perch, a proud and lonely representative of the feathered species watched them. In the Aries Guild office, an hour earlier, there was an atmosphere of excitement and optimism. "Are you sure you checked everything?" asked Wu Chong, his late guest. Shin Chong-gang sat at the table like an ill-mannered idiot with no manners. He threw his feet on the table as if there was no other way to sit underneath. Sean Gunn replied in agreement. What is he doing there? Thought Wu Jung. Why he is sitting like that? Is he ventilating himself, such a bastard? But he kept silent. He really is a monster of legends, Sean Gan confirmed, smugly smirking. Hyun-woo only had physical abilities, no magic, which was surprising. However, where there is strength, there is weakness. There are no invulnerable, continued Sean Gan. Recognizing his weaknesses is incredibly easy, he remarked with a smug look. Wu Chong smirked as well, realizing where this wild hunter with no manners was going. They knew exactly where he would appear next. It would be their dungeon, the visible swamp. The creepy and cocky type Sean Gunn jumped up from the table in one motion. Looks like he's really been practicing it for a long time. He's going to go ahead and get everything ready. Birds were chirping. A light breeze was blowing. Leaves were rustling. Nothing was troubling. Hyun-woo went for a walk to the swamp. As usual, he was in no hurry to get anywhere, letting the wind ruffle his bushy hair, and yet he felt strangely threatened, his hermit's intuition making itself felt. He felt a slight vibration in his pocket, and didn't immediately realize what it was. After all, he had gotten a phone not too long ago. Surprised, he looked at the screen. Not many people could contact a lone hermit. Little Seo-yeon texted him wanting to know about his plans for today. Hyun-woo sighed. He thought he'd get a phone and have cute girls texting him, but so far, only grumpy girlfriends were texting him. Yet he realized that his friends were worried about him, and they were acting like adults, which made Hyun-woo feel like a child. Aries, not Aries. What does it basically matter who and how? After all, it's the great him, Hyun-woo thought. Earlier, when she was sitting in front of him, beautiful, Seo-yeon asked him why he wanted Ari's dungeon. Sinner Hyun-woo is back in reality and out of the internet, but what can you take from a hermit with low social skills? He answered her question evasively. He's got business there, that's all, with his girlfriend. Hyun-woo continued to wriggle out of it like a frying pan, but he was pressured by the frightening power of the woman's charm. It would piss Aries off the least, he replied, grabbing his strawberry smoothie, not knowing how else to dodge the direct questioning. Con made a cat-like cute face and looked at him worriedly. She was left to sigh. Her friend was completely impenetrable. A good quality in combat, but difficult to communicate. Still, she decided to press him for a straight answer. He was bothering her too much. Of course, she knew he wasn't someone to worry about, but you couldn't be sure of everything. The new video from Forest Village confirmed his strength. He's definitely not a weakling who can be hurt by any passerby. Sitting in front of her was a highly troubled specimen of a recluse who easily looked for problems on his own head, and they found him. In any case, be sure to act quickly, little Seo-yeon instructed him with her thin but firm voice. Visible Swamp is an A-rank dungeon, and it's great for going unnoticed and avoiding unnecessary risk. On the day the boss appears, Aries will probably conduct a raid to kill him, Seo-yeon continued. Hyun-woo listened to her attentively. Still, she managed to get his attention. He still saw her as the schoolgirl he had cleared the tower with. He thanked her nonchalantly, as if he wasn't about to break into an enemy base where 100 dangers might await him. He had told her not to worry. However, things had gone downhill from the very first minutes. A guild guard stood in front of him, with a Chinese broadsword at his side, and he was frankly shaking with fear. Or perhaps he had already gotten a little lighter. The guard shouted loudly, When dogs are afraid, they also bark loudly to call out to their master, Hyunwoo thought. Seo Yeon haunted him even in his memories, and she had told him not to get caught by Ares' guards. How tiring it is, Hyunwoo said. The same thing every time, everyone shouting loudly and flying off one pitch. No fun. Couldn't they have reacted any differently? Offered tea, asked politely, so no, the same thing, wait. Who's coming? Resented Hyunwoo. And then you get into a fight even though you know you can't win, Hyunwoo continued. You can't learn. A samurai has no purpose, only a way. What do you realize? Ari's guard thought, and got terribly angry. He would have shouted something harsher, but he wasn't allowed to, and rushed to the attack. The plight of Ares' simple guards was hard, but they were paid for it. See a bright flash. It's the light of shattered hopes and dreams. Hyunwoo's fist is back in action. The road of adventure once led him, and then he met Hyunwoo, and only a light puff of smoke wafted in the wind. What a nuisance, Hyunwoo thought. I told them I was on business, and they gave me a pass, but I gave them a pass. Hyunwoo sighed heavily. What kind of an organization this Ares was, no pity for his subordinates at all. His foot fell through the soft soil. The quagmire was just around the corner. He walked right out into the center of the swamp and looked around. The boss was definitely nearby. Amber-slit eyes took predatory aim at the new prey, a lone defenseless target, so close you could smell his scent. The predator rushed into the attack like a revved-up mechanism. A veritable death machine on weighty short legs will emerge from the swamp. It raised a heap of splashing water and mud all around and rattled powerfully in the soft ground. Hyunwoo stopped. His ploy worked. You should pretend to be an easy prey. All the monsters are yours and will rush to attack. The boss appeared in front of him, a huge ancient fossil with the boring name of Mega Alligator. Hyunwoo recognized the beast, since Seoyeon made sure to tell him about it in detail. However, all Hyunwoo remembered was the cost of skin and teeth, which meant that the monster should be caught whole without damaging the skin. So much for a lonely hermit's pension, Hyunwoo thought. He let out his trademark smirk and activated his righteous nagging mode. Such blows the dinosaur fossil hasn't seen since the Chicxulub asteroid that wiped out the dinosaurs. The ancient lizard immediately became despondent, deflated, and skeptical. The hunt was not going well at once. Quickly kill it and skin it, informed the future bag, animal lover Hyunwoo. But the walking antiquity was not going to give up. He had experienced more than that in his long annals. You can always employ tactical retreat, not to be confused with panic flight. Hyunwoo instantly reacted. A valuable resource can't be let go. He had already thought of what kind of wallet he would have, and boots. He quickly and firmly grabbed the fleeing lizard. Time to make money. The crocodile had two tails at once, so holding it was even easier. For a few moments it turned into a hole digger. "Carousel! Carousel! It's a joy for us!" hummed Hyunwoo joyfully with a demonic grin. The crocodile remembered the dinosaurs as they fell and were replaced by weak rodents, but when say, everything went wrong, perplexed him. Having experienced an overload of 9, Megalligator realized that he would not be an astronaut. It was too much for him. With all his might, he flew into the rock, raising a cloud of dust around him. It's good to lie here, thought the lizard. Maybe he will be taken for a fossilized rock, sent to the museum to rest. But on the other hand, what this Pleistocene miscarriage allows himself, the crocodile remembered his cold-blooded pride. "Die not twice," said the ancient warrior. He scorned death, squeezing out a stingy tear. "I have lived a good life, which means the end should be bright." The monster went back into battle. An aura of martial determination enveloped his body, a proud warrior for mortal combat. Hyunwoo had no idea that someone else was watching his fight from the outside, waiting for his moment. Sean Gan smirked contentedly. Everything was going exactly as he had planned. The crocodile launched its body like a torpedo straight at Hyunwoo. "Great, one more round. The real boss always has a second phase," rejoiced the mad hermit. Just as suddenly, an indistinct force pulled him and threw him off balance. Red chains wrapped around his legs like red-hot metal, preventing him from moving. What about the samurai spirit and honor, thought Hyunwoo, but asking the boss to wait was out of the question. "That's it!" exulted the killer. "Sean Gunn! Now the bird will be eaten with its feathers." The chains held him as if he had fallen into quicksand. The more he moved, the more elm. Hyunwoo hadn't expected such an attack. The crocodile's jaws were ready to slam down on him like a huge stapler and pierce him. Easy money. Sean Gan was already mentally visualizing how to spend it in the best brothels in the country. He didn't pull away until the very end. "Since you can't move your legs, there are hands." Hyunwoo clung to the ground tightly. And just like that, he was able to dodge the torpedo in the alligator's face. Its mouth clanked loudly shut. Taking advantage of this moment, the cowardly crocodile jumped into the water. Wait, thought Hyunwoo, what about the crocodile skin boots? And the wallet and the bag, good socializing. He got upset and looked down at his feet. The unknown object was still preventing him from moving his legs, entangling them tightly and digging deeper and deeper. Magical chains, answered the unasked question. Sean Gan could now show himself, completely unafraid of his opponent. And what can he do with his power if he's now sitting miserable with a dirty face? "Mud and chains are great for you," said Sean Gunn, smirking. He felt like the master of the situation. "Some rude guy again?" Hyunwoo thought. Not only did he not say hello, but his bag ran away, so now I'm going to have to skin him. Sean Gunn came down closer, holding the red chains of magic in his hands. Time for a super villainous performance. "I'm Batman" almost came off his lips, but he corrected himself in time and said he was a hunter from the Ares Guild, a creepy boast. "You should see a psychiatrist for megalomania," Hyunwoo thought. "What kind of hitman calls himself a hitman?" he asked. "You think you're the smartest?" asked Sean Gan, approaching him. Now he's going to show him how big the world is. "You may be strong," continued Sean Gunn, "but strength isn't everything. You can spin a heavy dinosaur like a piece of fluff," the bounty hunter remarked. "Let you be able to kill a two-headed ogre with a single blow like a fucking cheater." Sean Gan measuredly chased his words. "But even if you were 100 times stronger, what could you do tied up in those chains?" the bandit asked him with a gloating grin. The chains became increasingly tangled around Hyunwoo like wired headphones. The longer the more knots, but it didn't bother him. As he suddenly found that he couldn't break them, a very uncommon skill was used on him. These aren't simple chains, but magical chains. Magical chains were obligingly explained by the villain. Thank him for the details, Hyunwoo thought. The only way to break them, another rank of magic. The noble bandit willingly gave away the weaknesses of his technique to the victim. Hyunwoo looked deeply stunned by this discovery. He looked ahead of him, as if he was desperately looking for a way out. He began to play dumb. Questioning the thug about something that was already obvious, Sean Gan became angry. Hyunwoo asked for the third time if he really couldn't get out, playing the role of a confused victim. Sean Gan gritted his teeth. The kid in front of him didn't understand, or didn't want to understand, the situation he was in. But he'd seen it more than once. Everyone he'd worked with had behaved the same way. They pretend to be calm, blowing dust in their eyes. But in reality, they are desperately thinking of ways to get out. Sean Gan amplified the magic of chains. "Those hapless dumbasses try to escape with stupid tricks," he continued, but Hyunwoo remained impenetrable. With a sharp movement, he exposed the hidden blade. It was time to finish the job. "He's killed plenty of guys this naive." Sean Gunn rushed forward to add another name to his death list. His attack filled the blade with a purple glow. Hyunwoo could barely keep up with his gaze. Just before the punch, he suddenly put his hands up and blocked it. But this attack also had a second effect. Sean Gan used the deadly poison technique. There was an explosion, and everything around illuminated with ultraviolet flash. Anyone watching the battle now would definitely be blinded. Sean Gan smirked contentedly. His opponent's pathetic, worthless brave would now be fodder for the swamp worms. In the thick smoke that rose from the impact, it was hard to see anything farther than an arm's length away. Gradually, the smoke cleared, and a shadow in the form of a human figure came through where Hyunwoo was sitting. Sean Gan tensed, not at all the effect he had expected to see, the smoke preventing him from seeing everything ahead properly. To his greater amazement, once the dust settled a bit, he saw a completely unharmed Hyunwoo. The one was still making a fool of himself that didn't even realize what had happened, or simply didn't even notice the flea strike. Shangan experienced a serious dissonance of expectation and reality. It was the first time he had seen such a thing. His attack didn't work, didn't leave a single scratch, didn't even crumple his clothes as if they were special magical armor. And in that instant he trembled, his legs unconsciously beginning to step backwards. Gradually what had happened began to dawn on him, and he imperceptibly quickened his step. Unable to withstand the tremendous pressure, he ran away in terror like a trotter. His heart was ready to stop when Hyunwoo's shadow grew in front of him again at a terrifying speed. The last thing he saw was a flying fist in his face, and then everything was a blur. Taking the blow, he flew back to the tree behind him. Another man in his place or monster would have turned to ashes from such a blow. But Shangan survived, though he was writhing in hellish pain as he put his whole body against the tree. It was as if the chains had stopped restraining Hyunwoo. He was moving completely freely. His defeated opponent had fused with the tree, leaving a deep dent in it. Even the dense wood behaved like soft ground beneath his feet. Now it was Hyunwoo's turn to torture the villain. "You should have tied up the whole body," he remarked. Shangan couldn't believe his eyes. The ego technique was completely useless after hundreds of uses. Chains slowly spilled over Hyunwoo's legs, much to Shangan's even greater horror. Hyunwoo defiantly raised the hand entangled in the chain that had visibly loosened. A light flip-flop kick ignited. Hyunwoo wasn't going to spare his enemy. From the kick, the long-suffering tree collapsed like an undercut along with Shangan. Hyunwoo grabbed him tighter. It was time to repeat the ride. Shangan clearly wasn't thrilled. He hadn't liked amusement parks since he was a kid, and he was very unaccustomed to being in the role of victim. Hyunwoo began to quote the great Chinese strategist. "Whoever comes to us with what and why, that's why," he said, swinging harder. The overload pressed Shangan even harder into the wood. He no longer knew what was worse, the shame of defeat or this agony. The crocodile in the swamp, meanwhile, was doing what he usually does, acting as a log, and reflecting a bit on his behavior. He was quietly floating peacefully in a small lake, not touching anyone, fixing the primus, as suddenly an ominous shadow loomed over him. Something was rapidly approaching him. A shadow covered the entire sky, but the reptilian eyes wouldn't let him look up and see what it was. A large log with Shangan on top hit the crocodile with tremendous force, causing a fountain of spray. Hyunwoo made a great throw in the townships, 2 goals in one fell swoop. He looked at the surrounding landscape through the eyes of an investigator. A hapless hunter chased a squirrel into a tree. It fell and was captured by a crocodile in the river. Looks like it was a hapless hunter nudist, a squirrel catcher. That's something that should have crossed anyone's mind, thought Hyunwoo. The status window lit up with a blue light notification has arrived. Defeating the boss, he got the lowest title there was. Meanwhile, in the Ares Guild office, someone was diligently drinking valerian with expensive whiskey. Shin Chonggong is dead received a short report from Wu Chong. There was no other information. Still, the hunter was working alone. All this meant that a very large and furry beast had just stepped on all his plans. A small investigation found that the corpse of the unlucky killer is already deep at the bottom of the swamp. The monsters had definitely eaten the remains. No body, no case. But you'll still have to answer, Shangan thought to himself. He'd probably launch himself to the moon from the burning of his sciatica, but the valerian had already kicked in, or maybe it was a liter of elite whiskey with no appetizer. Shin Chonggong is an elite assassin with 2 rank S skills. Read his case to Wu Chong. So this Shin Chonggong who was acting so blusterously killed Kim Hyun-woo puzzled a worried office worker. Everything that had happened was like a diabolical prank, someone's mockery. Such a thing was impossible to bitch about. Wu Chong wiped his teeth in anger. Then he imagined what his boss might do to him when he found out about the asset he'd spent, which would give him a week's worth of constipation. It was a quiet night in the bedroom district of Seoul. The stars were twinkling outside the window, and the city was drowning in the lights of the lanterns. Hyun-woo was lying in complete prostration on the couch in Shin-ken's living room, as befits an unemployed slacker. A fly on the ceiling, and how it's holding on, he thought as he stared upward. No matter how much he thought, he could not understand the vagaries of nature and existence. But still determined to figure it out, and called up the status window. A familiar blue hologram appeared before him like a projector screen, its light making his eyes ache. He couldn't understand the line under his name where the title Temporary Guardian was written. And an added ability, a right to information, he wondered, and with the size of the melons it would roll. And yet I couldn't know how to use it because I'd never seen such a change in the system. He also got an invitation, no exact location, but a countdown timer. Hyunwoo continued to puzzle over it for a long time. But no matter how many times he looked, there was no more understanding. Hyunwoo's adult and responsible friend returned to the apartment and greeted his unemployed comrade. Knowing how useless Hyunwoo was at household chores, since he hadn't lived in the house in over a dozen years, Shin Kyung inquired about dinner. Suddenly, Hyunwoo, it hit him. "Wait, don't press anything. Let me try," he said to Shin Ken. Hyunwoo decided to test out the new ability right to information. It must work somehow. Abracadabra, he said the words of activation and looked at his friend carefully. Shin Ken's status window appeared in front of Hyunwoo's face, but no new information was shown. How the hell to use this garbage, he blurted out. No, he's seen stupid scumbags, but this is the first time he's seen them this stupid, he said, referring to the developers of the system. But Shiken took it personally, so I had to calm him down. For the remaining 2 hours, he stared impatiently into the phone, counting minute by minute. The last few seconds stretched slowly like tar. It couldn't be that, he thought, that he'd just been tricked, or it wouldn't make sense. Hyunwoo waited tensely. He didn't know what awaited him, monsters, trials, but he was ready for anything. But then the lights went out. As if everything disappeared around him, he experienced a slight feeling of disorientation. When the light came back on, he found himself in a completely unfamiliar place. Good thing there was a chair under his buttocks, or he would have flopped to the floor. The place resembled a deep stone well, the light falling from above with no apparent source. He was moved stealthily without any portals. Hyunwoo looked around. There was a girl sitting at a table in front of him. Somewhere he had seen a similar scene before. The white-haired Chobit girl greeted him politely. She kept upright and moved little, and her skin looked unnaturally pale. "Nice to meet you, Guardian," she said. "I am an architect, or rather an assistant," quickly corrected the girl named Av. Av, Hyunwoo interjected, wondering how a name could consist of 2 letters like a toaster model. These meetings would be frequent now, the white-haired answering machine notified him. The mad recluse is encouraged. He can finally learn all about the tower and his imprisonment. 5 minutes of silence passed. Hyunwoo decided to see if she would really be unmoved. He even held his breath. 5 more minutes of silence. She's definitely not breathing. A freaking bucketoid instead of a living thing. Unable to stand it, he began questioning first. Human or not, he could definitely be talked out of it, he thought. The white-haired woman wasn't even going to explain anything. She slammed her gray eyelashes shut. This made Hyunwoo furious, so he jumped up from his chair and started yelling and demanding answers. She could answer a question if asked directly. Apparently, this model of GPT chat did not support a high level of abstraction. A goofy bucket with the appearance of a cute little girl confirmed his hunch. He asked her who imprisoned him in the training tower, a normal, straightforward question even a stupid Vedroid could handle. Lengthy data processing ensued. It looked like a Pentium 3 processor had been shoved into the girl. "Information denied due to low rank," the answering machine said after a long pause. How stupid is it, Hyunwoo thought, but decided to try again. He found out that only by going up a rank could he get more access and more information. At least that's what the machine said clearly. However, it pissed him off terribly that the system that this dolt of an answering machine, all done by crooked developers, had no answers anywhere. He tried to ask a leading question again. If you increase the rank, can you find out who created the tower? But it didn't work. The machine couldn't comment in any way on the hidden data about the system. It wasn't even clear what he would learn by raising the rank. It was frankly starting to piss me off. No user-centeredness. The entire development budget went to a pretty face. A query about the training tower also failed. Access denied. A request for the reason for its creation was also dismissed by a bucket of bolts instead of brains. The request for the causes of the monsters was also rejected. There is information here, but it is not given, only shown. Beautiful, Hyunwoo thought. He remembered how his father used to fix the TV when he was a kid, and if you bumped it, it would pick up the signal right away. This machine had one excellent property: it felt pain and you could vent all your anger on it. The goofy android with the appearance of a cute girl was rubbing his bruised head. Hyunwoo was getting really excited and was thinking about opening up the system unit, because the friend inside had something interesting to say. The girl bucketoid resented it. She couldn't give answers to his questions. Batten method works, thought Hyunwoo. However, the developers were still just wasting his precious time, and he was terribly angry. Anticipating an imminent unpacking, the android announced that there was still information available. "Guardian," said the bucketoid, shaking his fist as if that answer was so self-evident that it needed no explanation. "Guardian must guard," issued the robot another poorly written script. It seems one blow is not enough to enlighten the chips. The Vedroid hovered in overload mode again. It seemed to be her way of compensating for her lack of computational ability. She finally got around to giving out the main quest. Wouldn't have to spend so much time on empty dialogue branches. However, the Vedroid wasn't going to say anything from what Hyunwoo needed. At the moment, Hyunwoo is only a temporary guardian, whatever that means. To become an official guardian, you need to follow the link. Next came a not-to-be-missed commercial for an unknown Hyunwoo brand of electrical appliances. When it was over, he was able to ask Taki how to get a new rank. In 5 days' time, she said in the ominous voice from the movie call, the city will open a glacial fissure. There will be a beak in the deepest part of the cleft that will help him increase his rank. This city needs a new hero. Hyunwoo watched the lights of the crime-ridden city flicker on. Hyunwoo was backing away from the dialogue with the Chobit. He was still cringing from her phrasing and silly electronic voice. However, there was also something important. He must increase his skills in the first. In a very long time, he could become even stronger. There was nothing else to do but accept the assignment, especially since it involved a lot of outside people. In the morning, friends sitting in the cafe for breakfast was interrupted by the exclamation of little Seo Yeon. "Glacial crack," she shrieked. They came to eat meat and burgers, as befits true hunters. When Hyunwoo decided to ask his friends what they knew about Glacier Crevasse, the friends looked at each other anxiously and were in no hurry to answer. Shinken decided to find out the reason for this question first, and he too looked anxious. Hyunwoo was surprised at his friend's harsh reactions. It looked like the case was not an easy one. Shinken started to explain to him with a serious look. The phenomenon was familiar to him. "This is a real disaster," he said, "a catastrophe of enormous proportions. At the main headquarters of the Ares Guild, a soldering iron was warming in the boss's office to better motivate his subordinates. Boss Hyuk Seong-woo had just trashed the office furniture and was now thinking about who to use the electrical device on and how to use it. The post-landing news upset him very much, and he wondered what to do about it. His subordinate dispatched the guild's best assassin to remove an annoying nuisance, but ended up being killed by his target himself. "I wanted to send half the department to the torture chamber to maintain discipline and morale, but it wouldn't help the cause," Sungwoo thought. Woochong bowed his head guiltily and prayed that he would get away with it. He had experienced a red-hot poker last time and didn't want a repeat. The boss's attention shifted to Yu Ben-wook, and Woochong heaved a sigh of relief. "Start pissing goats," Boss Song said angrily, showing his violent nature more and more. He was taking personal control of the case, and was even willing to lend his money to new assassins, stronger than Sean Gunn. "And let the music play in his house, but he will not hear it," he ordered his men. He purposely asked again to know if he was understood correctly. Yu Ben nodded in response, immediately letting it be known that he had accepted for execution. The chief sat back in his chair, letting off steam. He felt lighter, or else some teenagers are having a debauch, killing the best people. It's a mess. And with something else entirely hanging on the agenda, the Pedo Guild too required urgent attention. Intelligence reported that they were gathering a real army and preparing for open war with the Ares Guild. Hunter wars are common. Yuben nodded again. The task was clear. Let everyone go to waste and fertilizer. Nothing can be left to these jackasses. Chief Sungwoo grabbed his head. So much to do, now I'd like to go to the sauna and have a drink, but business is business. He doesn't take care of himself at all. He's all business and business. You have to think about yourself, too. The merry quartet of first hunters sat in the restaurant and waited for their food. Hyun-woo rejoiced like a child looking at something bright in front of him. The ring in Kwang Song's hands glowed at the full 2 billion value. Such expensive things are given in the labyrinth. Kwang Sung gently hinted to his friend that it was time for him to stop being a freeloader and get a job. Hyun-woo learned from his friends the difference between a maze and a dungeon, and it turns out that there are different artifacts in them. The ring in question is also an artifact, so Yeon explained. Dungeons, on the other hand, give special resources such as magic stones or monster parts, Shinken added. The labyrinths give already finished artifacts from the treasury like this ring. The ring has an enchantment, Kwon Sung said, hoping to pique Hyun-woo's interest, just like in the games, the hermit remarked, examining the shiny trinket. Artifacts with enchantment, much better than ordinary ones. Hyun-woo gradually understood what was going on. The smell of money attracted him like a hare to a fox. As he looked closely at the ring and he began to see inscriptions in an ancient language, a status window appeared. Now Hyun-woo could use his ability to recognize objects through the system. He applied the skill right to information again, concentrating on the ring. Fucking classified material, thought Hyun-woo. The system hid the description. However, Kwon Seo's tip he accepted. After all the business, one should definitely pay a visit to the labyrinth. He returned the ring to its owner and checked its value again to make sure he hadn't heard it. After putting all his business aside, the hermit decided it was time for a meal. That's why he goes to meetings with friends, because he is well fed. He simply swiped his finger across the menu and ordered each dish like a true cave troglodyte. The friends were greatly surprised at Hyun-woo's bottomless stomach and complete lack of conscience. "Don't be shy," said Kwon Seo, barely holding back tears as it was his turn to pay the company's bills. Hyun-woo exclaimed as if he had forgotten a mere trifle, but now he had just remembered. "What do you know about the glacial crevasse?" He suddenly stunned his friends with his question. The question caught them off guard and silenced them. They tensed up considerably. There was a long silence as they thought about what their weirdo hermit savage had gotten himself into again. Meanwhile, the food, blood steak, pizza, and other appetizers were brought in, but Hyun-woo didn't back down and kept asking about the crack. It turned out that this is the name of a rift in the ground that suddenly appears, and from it monsters that have no end and no edge. Germany and China, where she appeared, are called the Gates of Hell, said little Seoyeon. Hyun-woo pondered, greedily devouring the meat. He had insanely missed eating normal food while living in the tower. The stupid android didn't say a word about the event being a real disaster. But what would happen if this thing showed up in their native Korea? He frightened the boys with his question. They couldn't find anything to answer, horrible pictures of the possible consequences floating before their eyes. Even the always combative Kwon Seo hesitated and huffed. He really didn't like these thoughts. The prudent Shurken calculated that even with a rank C crack, even if it was stopped in time, everything would be destroyed. Hunters lack cohesion, even if the guilds unite. Ares can refuse to help with only formal assistance. Those bastards, Hyun-woo reacted, taking out his anger on the piece of meat in his plate. He poked the unfortunate piece over and over again in deep thoughtfulness. They should rest and gain strength in the remaining 4 days, Hyun-woo informed them. However, he did not specify the details. Still, what he would say would sound too strange, and it was unlikely that his friends would understand it. The roar of turbines drowned out everything around for many kilometers. The airport was bustling with the usual work. However, something unusual had already begun to happen, and at first people didn't understand at all what they were feeling. But then they felt a jolt, as if someone was beating a drum and sending waves across the ground. The tremors grew stronger and stronger until a real earthquake started, throwing everyone into a panic. A long crack ran down the runway, as if the ground had dried up after a long heat wave. Soon it broke apart, beginning a tectonic labor. Everything around it shook terribly. Hundreds of screams erupted. Panic gripped the people at the airport as the crack turned into a veritable abyss. In the gloom of the underground temple, there was only one monk. The empty gallery was illuminated by the light of deadly dim lamps. The lone figure entered an atrium with a large round table where another man was waiting for her. "Level 9 has come to his senses," the novice reported, bowing. The man at the table inquired if someone the two knew about had fully awakened. "Soon it will be completely ready," reported a monk in a dark cassock. The man at the table was pleased with this news. He looked like a formidable warrior, and a dark aura surrounded him. His thoughts were occupied by them wild oddball hermit, a very unusual man. Just how strong is he? The warrior pondered, wanting to experience this man sooner rather than later. Seoul's airport continued to collapse under the powerful tremors, the disaster only gaining momentum. People fell on their backs and could not move from fear. They screamed loudly and begged for salvation. Soon other people began to pull up to the scene. The first to arrive was a helicopter of reporters and began to alert everyone to the disaster. The government announced an urgent evacuation. Within a radius of 5 kilometers from the airport, hundreds of thousands of people were to be saved. The airport was closed, and the first small group of hunters and those they could gather quickly were sent there. From above, a terrifying picture was revealed. The entire area around the crack was swarming with monsters. They were climbing like locusts. Smoke and the glow of fires covered the entire area. Everywhere reigned true chaos. A small group of hunters fought in a scattered formation in the open area of the parking lot. They could barely hold on. Terror struck them in the heart. Hardly could these people resist for long. Humanoid monsters with weapons in their hands and paws attacked the small and weak humans. There were too few of them to hold back the onslaught of multiple monsters, each of which was quite dangerous. The men were thrown in to plug the gap without proper training. They had lost all their fighting spirit and were shaking with fear, not knowing what to do. But among the ordinary hunters, there was one who did not lose his temper and took command. This guy reacted well to danger and rushed to help a comrade who was faltering. Magical ropes bound the ugly monsters and protected the confused fighter. Bound by a magical tentacle monster, the warrior finished off with a blow of his blade. He was showing excellent training and coherence. After the attack, he immediately retreated to avoid accidental hits on himself. This man knew his business. A soldier from his group started to thank the older man, but he sharply cut him off. The battlefield was no place for chatter. Their situation was still dire. They held on like rats cornered. The fierce attacks of the squad leader could not defeat them. He was merely stalling for time until the imminent end came. There were too many enemies, and the cavalry was in no hurry to help. At this rate, they would surely be slaughtered before it arrived. But he didn't even think of giving up. If he showed weakness, his men would completely lose heart and die immediately. The hunter courageously fought back with all his might. He smashed his enemies with the strokes of his broad sword. But in place of the slain monsters were new, full of strength, bloodthirsty monsters. They all run relentlessly to the airport, where there are many civilians who won't be able to defend themselves. The Dark Army kept arriving like a tide, wave after wave, completely unstoppable. They filled everything around them with bodies. From the left, strange sounds were heard, as if a hurricane was howling. The hunter squad leader turned around, and even he trembled when he saw this. A giant was coming toward them with heavy footsteps, the ground shuddering with his footsteps. A huge, club-wielding skeleton emerged from the crevice, a foe beyond even experienced hunters, let alone their tiny troop. The A-rank monster looked like a death sentence. The hunters who had gathered their courage once again despaired. They had no equipment or skills with them to do anything at all to this demon. The experienced squad leader froze for a moment. He hadn't been taught to think long. He'd been through more than one training course. He'd been turned into a killing machine long ago. But right now, his trained instincts weren't working and couldn't give him any kind of effective plan of action. "Run, you fools!" he shouted as he came to his senses, a surge of adrenaline bringing him to his senses. Another hunter with a shield at his side rushed to stop the monster's attack and protect their unit. A heavy club the size of a tree flew towards the small shield that could barely protect its owner. The fighter activated the skill, and a red glow flashed. He was giving his comrades time to regroup. The skeleton hit a home run, and the hunter flew away like a rag doll. The leader shouted, seeing how his fighter had just been seriously injured. The soft hull of the car buckled and cushioned some of the impact. The guy was lucky to miraculously stay alive, even though he was badly wounded. But the giant didn't stop and kept going forward. He didn't want to let his victim go so easily. The monster, without a gram of soft tissue, swung in to deliver a deadly strike to the wounded fighter. Skelequist firmly clutched a club with a metal hilt. At this size, it didn't matter how high quality a weapon the enemy used. The commander rushed as hard as he could to help. His fighter was unconscious and couldn't move, and the leader didn't have time. He only had to scream. He ordered him to stand up and survive, but in vain the giant was already lowering his bat to smash the man's head. Not that the squad leader thought he shouldn't see his men die, he should have died first. Just as suddenly, the light kick of a man in flip-flops and a tracksuit rolled into the battle and instantly eliminated the threat with a single slap. The skeleton turned into a pile of bones when it was swatted like a fly. The commander gasped. It was the first time he had ever seen such a sight. The cavalry made it in time, and the strange man saved them. The flip-flops knocked out sparks when the hero landed, the mighty slippers back in business. The fighters recognized their savior. His distinctive black suit and flip-flops were well known among hunters and beyond. The shaggy, wild hermit hero arrived in the blinding glow of his own glory. The hunters looked to him as a savior. There could certainly be no doubt. Experienced player Kim Hyun-woo practiced his heroic appearance and posed in various spectacular poses. The day had almost turned into night from the zing of smoke. The fire was spreading rapidly, threatening to burn everything to the ground. Hyun-woo stopped near the remains of the defeated enemy, those slowly melted, emitting miasmas, when the system notification popped up again and the status flashed. He had to head to the airport as well. After that, time was running out. Hyun-woo glanced at the hunters beside him in passing. They looked shabby, but never ceased to admire him. After mortal danger, they suddenly relaxed the bread and butter dramatically. "They're crazy," Hyun-woo thought. "This isn't a movie. There's still a fight going on." He asked them if they remembered where they were, like little children. After all, right now, they were being attacked by monsters from the back because the hunters had completely forgotten about them. Hyun-woo looked around the battlefield. His battle cohesion was not very good, but he was still dragging the rollers solo as usual. But the monsters were indeed a lot, and it was dangerous to leave them in the rear. The battlefield was a veritable catavasia. Blood guts, tears, screams of the wounded, the best medicine for writhing. Hyun-woo decided to help out a little to keep the hunters going until the main forces arrived. The damn big stick came in handy, and Hyun-woo armed himself with it. Hunter's eyes were distracted again, watching his actions. He didn't understand what the hermit was going to do. However, they couldn't help but marvel at his strength and might. He single-handedly held the log wielded by the giant skeleton. The man-rocket gave a start without back calculation and soared into the sky. Even a seasoned battle veteran commander had never seen such savagery in battle. Hyun-woo swung the telegraph pole in his hands properly and turned on death carousel mode. It spun around its axis very quickly. Then he executed a perfect throw like in the townships. A giant log flew towards the enemy. Those scattered like skittles, their crowding playing into the hands of Hyun-woo and his Jedi mind trick. The enemy's scattered cowardly tails, or their equivalent. The infernal lawnmower soaked the whole place, uprooting even the concrete slabs. Even the hunters were horrified by this terrible rampage. Hyun-woo cupped his hands. With that part of the task done, it was time to move on. The squad leader couldn't believe his eyes. The hero had saved them once again. The rumors about the experienced player were true. He allowed himself a flicker of emotion. Now there was a ray of hope in their desperate situation, and they could survive. "All right," he commanded. "Everyone gather around the experienced player. His fighting spirit had returned. This battle could still be won." He thought and noticed the player pressing down on his heels, leaving the battlefield as if nothing had happened. "I'll be back," shouted Hyunwoo to them. "They'll make it because they have the power of friendship." He swiftly raced away toward the airport, only flip-flops flashing. The commander fell out again. How could this be, and what was going on? Unanswered questions swarmed. His sword flashed and took a bloody harvest. The way of the samurai